Welcome, everyone, and I want to thank so much Utah Valley University for inviting me to speak today. I was in the restroom with my father just a few minutes ago, and he reminded me that I needed to always make sure and keep things positive, and that made me extra nervous because the truth is the things we're talking about today are really difficult. I have tried to take some of the sharp edges off the presentation, and I think there are a few areas of hope. But if it ends up being a presentation that makes you a little bit sad, I hope that you can maybe just channel that as you think about the people that we're talking about, because in some sense that might not be completely inappropriate. But I'm excited to have you here. On November 11th, 2011, Elder Marlon K. Jensen was asked the following questions during a visit to Utah State University. Quote, has the church seen the effects of Google on membership? Is the church aware of that problem? What about the people who are already leaving in droves? Elder Jensen provided the following response. Quote, we are aware. Maybe I'll just say this. I often get this question. Do the brethren really know? They do. And I'm not speaking of me. I'm speaking of the 15 men that are above me in the hierarchy of the church. They really do know, and they really care. And they realize that maybe since Kirtland, we have never had a period of, I'll call it apostasy like we're having right now, largely over these issues, end quote. In a desire to bring more visibility and understanding to this growing problem, a survey was designed and administered by the Open Stories Foundation in the summer and fall of 2011. The participation criteria for the survey were as follows. 1, the participants must have once believed that the LDS Church was true. And 2, they must no longer believe that it is. The survey was administered via snowball sampling through various means, including email, Facebook, prominent Mormon blogs, and online forums where formerly believing Mormons congregate. A total of 3,086 respondents were included in the final analysis of these data, which can be found at the website whymormonsquestion.org. This presentation seeks to review some of the highlights from the study and to briefly explore how the internet is helping formerly believing Mormons navigate their lives post-belief. It is important to acknowledge that this survey focused on a specific group of disbelievers, i.e. those with historical, doctrinal, theological, cultural, and social issues with the church, who also spend a lot of time on the internet. This survey did not draw from a randomized sample and does not claim to be representative of all LDS believers. Now to the findings. Finding number 1. The respondents as a group appear to be relatively well educated, with higher than average income, and with notable levels of prior church leadership experience. 97% of our survey respondents had at least some college education. 60% are college graduates, and 31% hold graduate degrees. Regarding income, 43% indicated an annual income of $80,000 a year or more, and 29% of over $100,000 per year. Regarding leadership callings, for our female respondents, 42% served in Young Women's presidencies, and over a third in Relief Society presidencies. For our male respondents, 3/4 served missions, half served in elders' quorum presidencies, and 1 out of 5 have served in bishoprics, or 20%. Interestingly, 20 of our participants have served in stake presidencies, 5 have served as mission presidents or in mission presidencies, and 1 respondent served for 5 years in one of the quorums of the 70. Finding number 2. The traditional explanations as to why people lose their testimonies do not appear to apply to this population. According to our data, only 4% cited being offended as a reason for losing their faith. Similarly, only 4% indicated a desire to drink alcohol or to have extramarital sex as reasons. Qualitative responses suggest that such accusations are experienced as deeply hurtful to this group. Respondent 3129 wrote, "Stop assuming people who leave do so because they are offended or want to sin. Look at church history and all its inconsistencies and you will find the answer. I left the church. No one offended me. I enjoyed the ward members and still consider them to be my friends. I obey the law of chastity and word of wisdom. I am faithful to my wife. It's the history, and it's not just a single issue. They compound each other until you realize something is fundamentally wrong with the picture and the stories you have been fed and the emotions you have been feeling were all based on falsehoods. Finding number 3. The 10 most common issues contributing to disbelief are, in decreasing order: cease to believe in the church's doctrine and theology, studying church history; 3, losing faith in Joseph Smith as a prophet; 4, loss of faith in the Book of Mormon; 5, loss of faith in the general authorities of the church; 6, the church's stance on homosexuals and Proposition 8; 7, the church's stance on women; 8, the church's stance on race issues, including both blacks and Native Americans; 9, not feeling spiritually edified at church; and 10, the church's historical stance on scientific matters. Finding number 4. In the qualitative responses, there are a few additional themes emerged that merit consideration. They are the following. 1, feeling judged for not conforming socially, financially, or politically to the norms. Number 2, the constant emphasis on this being the one true church. Number 3, unrealistic expectations of church members with regard to time, money, and behavior. And 4, the church's handling of its finances, specifically related to its lack of financial transparency and the church's investment in the construction of the City Creek Mall. Finding number 5, the 10 biggest historical issues are the following. Tying at first place are 1, the issues of polygamy and polyandry, polyandry being Joseph Smith's marrying of other people's wives, and 1b, issues with the translation of the Book of Abraham not matching the original papyra from which it was purported to have been translated. Number 2, the denial of priesthood to blacks. Number 3, DNA evidence in the Book of Mormon. Number 4, Masonic influences in the LDS temple ceremony. Number 5, multiple and conflicting versions of Joseph Smith's first vision story. Number 6, anachronisms such as horses and steel in the Book of Mormon. Number 7, the denial of priesthood to women. Number 8, issues regarding the authenticity or credibility of the priesthood restoration. Number 9, past church positions on science, age of the earth, evolution, etc. And 10, Joseph Smith's use of a peepstone in translating the Book of Mormon. To provide just one illustration, participant 2612 wrote, quote, "The largest factor for me was polygamy by Joseph and the dishonesty involved. Sneaking and lying to those you care about. Taking other men's wives just sounds like something Warren Jeffs would do, and every part of me said that this was wrong and not something God would want a real prophet to do. It made me suspicious and started my search for truth." Finding number 6, it is rarely one or few issues that lead to someone's disaffection. Instead, it appears as though our respondents' metaphorical shelves are collapsing from the weight of numerous major issues. On average, survey respondents cited 15 major factors and 13 minor factors as having an impact, indicating that there was not simply one or two issues that led to disbelief. On the contrary, many issues appeared to stack up until belief was lost. Participant 2612 continued, "There are just too many things that do not add up. One or two historical problems may be okay, but there were too many things to put on the shelf and the walls came crumbling down." Finding number 7. It is clear from the qualitative responses that the perception of a lack of transparency and openness on the part of the church regarding its history is a major cause for disaffection for these participants. Respondent 1857. "The problem was not so much the history of the church, which is really accessible in many good general history books. Rather, it is the discrepancy between what I was learning about Joseph Smith in church history and the sanitized version that I had been taught by LDS leaders my whole life. If LDS leaders had taught the truth about Joseph Smith from the very beginning, then I would have never left." Respondent 113. "As for history, in some cases, the fact that the church actively hides some elements of its history is worse than the actual events themselves." Finding number 8. While we are aware of many fine people working in the field of LDS apologetics, including Scott, it is apparent from the qualitative responses that for many of our respondents, LDS apologetics are not always helpful and in some instances may actually accelerate disaffection. especially when done poorly or with condescension. Respondent 2844 wrote, "As I studied church history and uncovered many controversial historical evidence, I would frequent LDS apologetic sites for answers, Farms, now the Maxwell Institute, Shields, and FAIR. I soon discovered that those sites rarely dealt with the controversial evidences, but rather often skirted or obfuscated the issue and frequently resorted to personal attacks on the individuals who were publishing historical information." From Respondent 1865, "Please stop the ridiculous apologetics. Their circular reasoning and logical fallacies do more harm than good." Finding number 9. While 56% of our respondents no longer attend church, it's interesting to note that 44% of our respondents that no longer believe the church is true still retain some level of church activity. Finding number 10. For those who remain active in the church, it appears as though they overwhelmingly do not feel comfortable discussing their faith crises with ward members, church leadership, friends, and some family members. The list of those who still have been told little to nothing by those who are struggling includes the following: ward members at 92%, extended family at 85%, friends at 74%, children at 73%, bishops at 72%, and parents at 66%. Providing a clue as to why some might not be comfortable speaking with their bishops, Respondent 172 wrote, "In addition to the historical inaccuracies I discovered, my testimony was destroyed by judgments I received when I brought questions to my local ward and stake leadership. Instead of helping me find answers, I was accused of being in sin and stripped of my temple recommend." Based on this and other responses, it appears as though LDS bishops may be ill-equipped to deal constructively with the challenges facing this population. Finding number 11. A majority of respondents indicated that their disbelief has led to high or extremely high costs to their relationships, spiritual or mental health, or employment. Numerous stories that we have gathered in preparation for this presentation help to illustrate the extent to which families have been destroyed over these issues. I will read only one. "I was the 5th child in my family to go inactive, 7 children total, but the first child to officially resign from Mormonism. I told my family and my husband's family. We were taken out of wills. We went from being the first choice to raise my nieces and nephews upon a death by will to never being able to raise a niece or nephew if a sibling died. My dad told me that when I announced that I had resigned, he felt like he had been slapped in the face, sick to the stomach. Then my dad proceeded to tell me that I had caused him more pain and anguish than the 6 other kids combined. I have a brother that has fathered 10 kids. He has abandoned 6 of them. Yes, a real deadbeat dad. 3 marriages, an affair, $100,000 in debt. Some of his kids are drug addicts, teen pregnancy. But I have caused more pain than my messed up brother and all my siblings combined. I'm happily married to my first husband. My husband got an MBA at a top university. We are financially solvent. I had 2 children. One of my kids was born with many delays and diagnosed on the autism spectrum at age 4. After many countless therapies, he is 9.5, totally mainstream and just about considered recovered. My daughter is beyond amazing, 4.0 GPA, all-star athlete, beautiful, respectful. She is the dream grandchild, and we get nothing. He didn't see her perform on stage at a university when she was 6, didn't see her qualify or win state, has never come to a concert, performance, or sport meet of hers ever. The 2 years after my resignation, every picture of me was taken down in the house. He couldn't even look at a picture of me, even a baby picture. He just kept hoping that the neighborhood would never find out, and if someone asked how I was doing, he didn't know how to answer. He is just embarrassed and confused." Finding number 12. Disbelievers who remain active in the church indicated significantly higher mental and spiritual costs than those who go inactive or resign from the church. In other words, staying active in the church as a disbeliever for many is perhaps the hardest and most damaging of all scenarios. Participant 3330 provides some clues as to why activity is so difficult for non-believers. It's a very destructive reality of our Mormon culture that those that feel they are struggling with intellectual aspects of our religion and or culture end up in a position of isolation. We often feel like we have no choice but to quietly, tight-chestedly continue on in a church we're not sure we believe in anymore, or throw in the towel altogether. It is the loneliest, ugliest feeling to exist in a community that you feel completely outcast from because of an otherwise perfectly wonderful need you have to understand rather than to just accept. Finding number 13. Perhaps the most saddening portion of the survey involves the ways in which marriages have been affected by the fallout from participant disaffection. 28% of still active respondents indicated paying a high or extremely high cost in their relationships with their spouse. The following qualitative responses perhaps capture best the impact that LDS disaffection is having on marriages and families. Respondent 1080. I wish that the church allowed me to participate as a non-believer. As I experience it now, unless I pay tithing, have a temple recommend, etc., I can't participate in the rituals, ordinances that are so important to my believing family. Baptism, priesthood ordinances, temple marriages. I think simply allowing unbelievers to participate in these types of events will make a huge difference in my family relationships. Right now, they're just a painful reminder to my family, so I just end up not attending these events at all. From my perspective, the church is dividing my family, not bringing us closer together. Respondent 3076. My wife divorced me because I had critical doubts over the church's divine leadership on the issue of homosexuality. The Brethren's attempt to protect the sanctity of marriage from homosexuals, to some degree, resulted in the dissolution of my temple ceiling. Respondent 438. We desperately need a general conference address telling spouses to not divorce an otherwise good spouse over non-belief. I have several friends who have been divorced over primarily this issue, and my own marriage is still on the rocks due to it, even though I am fully active. And Respondent 691. Tell your bishops and leaders to tell their members to not divorce their spouse when they leave the LDS Church. My husband was advised by his bishop to divorce me. We had 10 children. It was awful. The church says that families are the most important. You should be ashamed of yourselves. And finally, finding number 14. While 76% of respondents indicated no desire to return to church, and Dad, here's some happy news. It is worth noting that 24% of respondents indicated that they would be willing to come back under some circumstances. The main conditions given for returning were the following. Number 1, greater openness and acceptance towards those with doubts and or non-literal beliefs. Number 2, more transparency and upfront information about historical issues and controversies. Number 3, more acceptance and treatment of homosexuals. And number 4, more respect, sensitivity, and equality for women. Last Tuesday, I posted the following question to my Facebook page. For those of you who have lost your faith in the one true churchness of Mormonism, how has the internet helped you make your transition easier or better? Within minutes, I received dozens of thoughtful and heartfelt responses that I will group into the following categories. Number 1, the internet has helped these people to not feel so alone and to find new communities. Monica Whitlock writes, I shudder to think how much more agonizing my transition would be without the community of support available on the internet. I don't feel alone, and I know I'm not crazy. Rob Barton wrote, the internet became my new ward. Hillary Hunt added, the friendships I have now feel 100% more authentic. Jack Caden Steele wrote, I found people who are willing to offer a listening ear and a shoulder to occasionally cry on. Second, the internet has helped to accelerate the learning process through informational sites like MormonThink.com and podcasts like Mormon Expression, Mormon Stories, and Mormon Matters. From Jennifer Ball Kuntz, what would have taken 2 decades of exploration, doubt, and confusion ended up being just a few months because all the resources I needed were easily accessed. I was quickly able to at least find my direction from those who have gone before me. Number 3, the internet has helped them deal with overwhelming emotions. Martha Cook Arndt wrote, a lot of my harsh, negative attitudes softened as I was able to read other people's experiences and see how others addressed issues. Janelle Brinton added, online support is where I found the most peace and healing. And Ashley Petty Murbach wrote, without the internet, my problems and questions with the church would have festered to an unhealthy degree. Total depression, identity crisis, possible divorce, loss of trust in self, total aloneness, no one to talk or admit to, no safe space. All of these were mine and would have been for years and years longer if it had not been for the internet. To the internet, I truly owe my current happiness. Number 4, somewhat surprisingly, some indicated that the internet has helped them to either reclaim or rejuvenate their relationship to the church in more authentic ways. Holly Bloomwell wrote, I was able to claim my Mormonism instead of pushing it away. I am a Mormon and an agnostic, and that's good. Ben Dolman added, on the internet, I found so many examples of thoughtful people that had grappled with these issues. These people shared a perspective that made me realize I didn't have to throw out everything good because of some problems. Number 5, and in perhaps some of the most dramatic instances, some respondents claimed that the internet literally saved their lives. Liv Appleton shared, postmormon.org literally saved my life. If it was up to me being left with how my family treated me, I would have killed myself. Another anonymous writer noted, the internet has literally saved me. I would probably still be suicidal from it all if it were not for the one-of-a-kind support I have found on the internet. I cannot express how much comfort I have gained from being able to have this access to people and information. It is not a stretch to say this is one of the reasons I am still alive today. For the last few minutes, I would like to share a few personal reflections. In 2001, while studying my heart out as an early morning seminary teacher, I experienced my own crisis of faith. As I turned to family, friends, ward members, and ward leadership for help, I encountered landmines at every turn. Turning to the internet for support out of almost desperation, I was disappointed to find either apologetic or antagonistic resources, and almost nothing that sought to be a neutral support for me in my journey. This led me to start Mormon Stories podcast in 2005, and since then I've interacted with well over 2,000 disaffected Mormons from all over the world. In all these interactions, perhaps no story has touched me as deeply as that of Marco, a third-generation Mormon from the Netherlands, biochemistry PhD, father of 3, returned missionary, former Elders Quorum president, Young Men's president, ward mission leader, temple worker, and institute teacher. A few months ago, Marco shared with me his story. He wrote, although losing my faith in the LDS Church was not a pleasant experience, the main cause of my pain was the sorrow I was putting my wife through. Instead of a worthy priesthood holder, she now had an atheist at her side. Prayer and scripture study as a couple and as a family, which for years had brought our family peace, were now awkward and uncomfortable moments. I could hardly stand being at church anymore. Only the thought of half the family going to church was actually worse. I was making my wife live a temple marriage by herself. I could stay in the church for her sake, just going through the motions and shutting off inside, but that would mean our children would be raised in the church and set up for the same pain I was going through. I remember being on my way to pick up my mother-in-law to babysit as I burst into tears. I had just run a red light at a crossroad on entering the highway. I wanted to hit the brake, but was compelled to keep my foot on the gas. I realized I had become an actual danger to myself and my surroundings. I was disgusted and frightened that I might not be able to resist carrying out the horrible thoughts that had been forcing themselves on me. I just wanted my pained soul to end. As I saw no way forward, the option of ending things permanently for me and my wife and children became an option that was constantly on my mind. Later, Marco shared with me that he knew it was time to reach out for help when he found himself running the same red lights on purpose with his wife and children in the car with him. I'd like to end this talk by bearing a solemn witness of sorts regarding the thousands of Latter-day Saints like Marco who are losing their testimonies to the church. Number 1, their issues are legitimate. Number 2, their motives are overwhelmingly genuine. And number 3, their pain and suffering are real and are significant. It is our hope that the Why Mormons Question Initiative can serve a constructive role in building greater awareness, empathy, and support, and less judgment and marginalization to those who struggle. For those who are interested in accessing the survey and potentially sharing it with friends, family, ward members, and ward leadership, I encourage you to download the findings at whymormonsquestion.org and to do your part to join us mourning with those who mourn and comforting those who stand in need of comfort. Please look for more surveys, podcasts, and screencasts from us in the weeks and months to come ahead. And thank you for listening.